So hello and Om Shanti, good evening to everyone. Warm welcome and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you've been enjoying our kindness challenge so far, called Celebrating Kindness Inside Out. I hope you've been joining the sessions and enjoying and learning, and I hope it's been helping you and keeping you busy with your acts of kindness and your displays of kindness out there in your lives. My name is Wesley and welcome to tonight's session, which is going to be a Q&A panel with some very lovely speakers. I would like to just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands from which we're all dialing in from. For me today, I'm speaking from my home in Brisbane, traditionally referred to as Mianjin, home of the Turrbal and Jagera people, and I pay my sincere respects to their elders, past, present and future. So welcome again. Our topic tonight is kindness. It starts from within. Tonight we have three speakers joining us and I'll introduce them now. So first we have Carolyn Ward. So Carolyn is a transformational coach, a meditation teacher and the author of two books called The Four Faces of Woman and My Courage, Your Courage. Her expertise is in the process of individual and collective transformation. And she's known for her big heart, her creative vision, and her authenticity, definitely qualities I've observed in her in the few interactions that we've had. Carolyn has been a practitioner of Raj Yoga meditation with the Brahma Kumaris since 1990, so a very experienced meditator. She's currently based at the Brahma Kumaris Retreat Centre at the Yarra Valley outside of Melbourne. And she also runs a coaching business called The Shifting Space, where she helps people to navigate through deep change and to create the lives that they love. So welcome, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Wes. It's very lovely to be here and what a beautiful topic.
Thanks, Caroline. Next up, we have Peter Spence. So Peter has a long history in the arena of high performance sporting. He's had various roles in coaching and management within a number of organisations such as the Victorian Institute of Sport, the Australian Cricket Board, and various other organisations. In more recent years, Peter shifted more into consultancy, where he worked with organisations to develop sustainable high performance systems in business and other areas. His interest is in looking across the different areas of business, sport, performing arts, science and education and learning and many other areas and looking at the synergies across those. So Peter is currently retired and he lives in Phillip Island, Victoria, where he's currently working on some writing. He's also a member of the advisory board of Calm in the City, which I'm sure a lot of you know. They facilitate meditation events for the city of Melbourne. So if you live in Melbourne, definitely check them out, Calm in the City. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks very much, Wes. Great to be here.
Thanks, Peter. And last but not least, we have Clementine Hartson. So Clem is the founder and the CEO of Project Kindness, which is a charity organisation based in Sydney, providing a whole range of community support, donations, and a safe space to the vulnerable and those in need in the community. So Clem has a background working in child protection and adult mental health, and she's a passionate advocate for stronger, more connected communities. Clem was also named the 2021 Heffron Woman of the Year in recognition of her work with Project Kindness and the work she's done for the community. So really glad to have you with us tonight, Clem. Welcome.
Thanks, Wes. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
No worries. So welcome again to all of our speakers. We have a really nice panel discussion for tonight. And I just wanted to, just before we start, I did want to invite everyone else who's joined, if you're comfortable, please do switch on your cameras. I think it really helps us and helps our speakers to be able to see your faces as well, and just to be, be more comfortable for our session. So if you are comfortable with it, please do feel free to switch on your cameras for tonight. Okay, so guys, our topic tonight is, of course, kindness. It starts from within. And tonight's session is obviously part of a bigger program, which is the Kindness Challenge running through November, where all the participants, they're earning points for different acts of kindness and other activities. And so tonight's session is really, I think, a really nice way to assist a lot of our participants in the way we think about kindness. And personally, I feel that kindness, it's an intrinsic quality that every person has within them. And it gets activated, as I'm sure you'll all agree with, it gets activated very easily when we start to do acts of kindness to others. But something that I've observed over time is that when we think about acts of kindness, we tend to focus a lot on doing things for others, being kind to others, really a lot about the action and the doing. But I've seen that there are other parts of kindness which we can often overlook, and it's to do with things like, so number one could be the awareness we have inside when we perform an act of kindness or an action. And number two would be being kind to ourselves. I think these two things, they're very often forgotten about when we start to think about kindness and acts of kindness. And so that's the reason I mentioned them tonight. And, you know, they're not really external things. They're things that sort of happen up here very internally. So I'm very interested in exploring these a little bit with you guys tonight. So I'll start with the first question, and I'll open this up to everyone. I'd love to hear from each of you, Peter, Carolyn, and Clem. I'd love to hear a little bit from you about your areas of work, and in your areas, how does kindness fit into what you do? And if you've got any personal stories or any experiences that you want to share related to kindness, we'd really love to hear them. So maybe I'll throw it to you, Peter, if you want to go first. You're on
Sorry,
mute,
Wes,
Peter.
I've muted myself. I think kindness is just central to life. I've been particularly interested in performance throughout my career and just amazed at what people can do. In the Calm of the City, there's been a Calm Collective established. That was kicked off by Justin Langer. He opened the first session and Carolyn Ward facilitates each session. It's been a remarkable series. But I raised Justin Langer because he's a very humane individual. He's scored more runs in first-class cricket than any other Australian. So he's a very experienced guy, but he's a very kind guy. And he's a very deep meditator. Has been a meditator since 1993, and he says that made such a difference to his life. But there's an element of kindness about him. He's as I said, a very staunch competitor, but he always maintains the balance and the kindness that, speaking with Justin, it just comes from within. I think Carolyn could vouch for this because she interviewed him. He's just a fine individual, and I think anybody who does it well, anything in their life, are usually comfortable with who they are, they're comfortable in their own skin, and they look out for other people. So I think kindness is just so important, and it is certainly something that comes from within. It's got to be part of our essence.
Yeah, wonderful, and good to hear a personal example of that as well. I was curious, Peter, do you have any stories or any other clients that you've worked with where, you know, in some shape or form, kindness has been a key part of that?
Yeah. I find that everybody who I've worked with, and you know, the Victorian Institute of Sport, we had a maze of Olympic gold medalists, world champions, and so on. By and large, they were all very kind individuals. Catherine Freeman is a great example. Catherine Freeman, I don't know if any of you have met her, but she's been involved with Calm in the City quite a bit. Catherine is just a marvellous soul, and she won that Olympic gold in Sydney 2000 after lighting the flame, the Olympic flame at the opening ceremony, which was just a real pressure situation that she was thrust into. But there's an underlying thread with Catherine that she is just so humane, so kind. Like Justin Langer, such a great competitor, but she is just a great human being. I think, as I said earlier, I've found that those who have really excelled are comfortable with who they are. They're comfortable in their own skin and they look out for other people. And they're not hard on themselves. And this kindness is something that's just a thread that I think guides life. And I applaud you, Wesley, for what you're doing in discussing this.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And I think, I think it's spot on, isn't it? That, that the whole, it starts with the self and kindness to others. It's only really, I feel, and I'm probably curious to see what everyone else thinks as well, that it's really only sustainable when kindness is actually a part of who you are rather than just a thing that you do. Would you agree with that? I think that's what you're
most
saying.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I think when you can step beyond the materialistic approach to life and appreciate life for what it is and appreciate our role in that life, then we can become better human beings. But we're better human beings who have respect for ourselves, but also respect for all those with whom we interact. And I think that's the true essence of life. It's just a great shame that we're still locked into the materialistic approach to life, and we're the poorer for that. But I'm sure there is going to be more of a spiritual acceptance, a realisation that there is much more to this life than just winning or losing. We've got to go beyond the materialistic approach and tap into the spiritual approach. When we do that, then we can appreciate life for what it is, appreciate the enormous capacities that we have as human beings, and then engage with others so that we help others to express what they're capable of.
What is that?
So it looks like Wes is frozen.
Frozen, yeah.
Oh, and then there's some interesting blurby business. Oh,
There we go.
Hello, sorry. I am so sorry about that. I don't know what's happened with my connection. Anyways, it's back again. Sorry, Peter, did you finish what the thought you were going down? I did miss the end of it, but
pretty much, Wes. I just suggested that we need to enter into a more spiritual approach to life rather than the mercenary, the materialistic approach, the mechanistic approach, which I think too many of us have been educated in that way. And we need to take a step away from that and just recognise the spiritual opportunities that there are for each and every one of us to live much more fulfilling lives. And central to that is this element of kindness, which you've so well introduced tonight.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I'm interested, maybe Clem, I'll throw it across to you. Did you want to add anything? And same question to you. I'd love to hear about your area of work and how kindness fits in with that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So thanks, Peter. That was awesome. Everything you said, fantastic. I run a charity called Project Kindness. So every day, kindness is the number one priority. So we see a lot of individuals on a daily basis who are either homeless, so sleeping rough, or living with severe mental health or disability challenges. So people who just need kindness and human connection and just to sit down and have a really good chat. So yeah, kindness for me is so important. It's something that we try and instill in our community around us, and we, you know, have lots of people coming on board and trying to support. So yeah, it's the number one thing in every day. And I find myself being kind, it gives you an amazing sense of purpose, I guess, and reason to wake up every morning. It's one of the best feelings in the world. So yeah, really lucky to do what I do, and it's centered around kindness. Yeah.
And I'm sure you must draw the blessings of so many people in the community, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, people in a place like Sydney where there's so much wealth, there's also so much disadvantage and poverty, and it's heartbreaking that this is happening right on our doorstep. So kindness is always the first thing we walk in whenever we see anybody. That's what we do. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clem.
No,
I will definitely come back to you with some more questions after.
Yeah,
Carolyn,
sure.
I'd love to hear from you on the same question. Anything else to add?
Yeah, look, I just like being in this space at the moment. I look at Clem's face and it's just, you emanate kindness. As soon as I saw you come online, your camera, and I know Peter for a long time and one of the kindest people I know. And so for me, it's a really interesting thing, because I think if we talk about love, for example, it's a little bit confusing. It can be all sorts of different kinds of love. But in a sense, kindness is a very practical expression of love, a way in which we can connect too. And I think in this time when people feel so disconnected and so alone and isolated, when someone's just a little bit kind to you, it's like, oh, that's so nice, you know? And it's like you said, Clem, when you're kind to someone else, it kind of comes back to you automatically. It's the blessings, but there's something that it's like it really uplifts your own nature, which I think our real nature is to be generous, to be kind, to see the best in others, to put, you know, help someone if you can without being a chronic helper. But, you know, so I think it's only win-win, and it doesn't have any baggage around it, which is wonderful. You know, it's kind of only got like the tree behind you, the picture behind you. Kindness only has good feeling about it. No one can argue about kindness. And it really is disarming. And so I know for me that I would say that in my work as a coach, but also working with women in over 60 countries around the world. And I know very much that women are very hard with themselves. You know, the natural go-to is really often very mean with ourselves, you know, and that's in an attempt to achieve, to be better, to kind of become not even the best we can be, but this sort of competitive framework of achievement, the achievement model, which fundamentally says who I am is not enough. So I've got to be more in order to be acceptable. And in a world that has been very, like you said, Peter, very materialistic, and Clem, you'd see it in, you know, the sort of fallout of not caring kind of world of many people not achieving and feeling less, and the world kind of tossing them away. But many of us feel like that, feel tossed away in secret, you know, rejected, or compare ourselves a lot with others and come up short. And we're very unkind to ourselves as a human race. And you brought that up at the beginning, Wes. And I think it's a beautiful thing that if you are kind to someone, if you can come out of your own self-obsession, it does make you feel better, for sure. But my experience after being really hard with myself, trying to be better and, even not even in a kind of ambitious worldly sense, but even as a spiritual journeyer, I had to be the best spirit, like it was just ridiculous. I had to be better spiritual and, like this hard. And I remember one New Year's Eve, I was living with a friend of mine here in Melbourne, many years ago now. And we didn't go out, we were just sitting around and reflecting on the year. And I'm telling my story, but I know over many years of talking to many different people and listening, many workshops, this is a very normal story. But we were sharing the news, and this is a male friend of mine who I live with. And he was really good at singing his own happiness. He was very good at it. Excellent, everything's great, it's terrific. And he asked me, how are you feeling about the year that passed? And I started to, lament all the failures, all the where I didn't measure up, all the wasn't good enough stuff. And my intention, my thinking around that is to be honest and make myself better. And I became very depressed as I was telling him. And then I noticed there was something in me that was expecting him to be compassionate with me. And he wasn't. He was implacable, just looking at me like this. And then I felt worse because I thought, how terrible is that? And I started to have a few tears drop down my face, and he didn't budge. And I stopped, and he said, Kaz, you're such a great soul. He said, but like the way you treat yourself, why do you do that? It was like throwing cold water over me, And he said, look, if it worked as a strategy, I'd say, okay, but look, clearly it doesn't. And in that moment, he said, it's not like you're going to keep going like this and one day you'll be happy. Happiness is the way. And it finally hit me after all my hard tasking that I have to be kind with myself. That was my first step to recovery from a hard heart, like being hard with myself and hard with the world. And step by step, and it was just about being kind. That was my main work for a long, long time. Speak to myself better, because we all speak to ourselves all the time. But what are we saying? So I started to be kind, and then I became softer, and then I became more spacious, and then I became more able to sort of sit with things, less anxious, more able to see another, hear another. And so for me, in all my years of now working with people, it's my number one go-to from my own experience and then working with others. And I know if you look at yourself with that kindness, encouraging, then your inner world becomes lovely. And then that automatically spills out, and you're lovely with others. You're kind with others. So I'm with you, Wes. I think it's the number one point. And sometimes when you're not feeling so kind with yourself, to go outwards and do a kindness helps reconnect you again. Yeah.
Yeah, really wonderful. And I'm sure every person on a life journey goes through something like that, where they kind of have to re-examine their relationship with themselves and the self-talk, as you said, or that self-dialogue, or that self-narrative that always plays in our minds, even if we don't realize it. But yeah, absolutely. And it is such deep work, isn't it? When you have to, maybe confront isn't the right word, but when you have to face it and kind of resolve some of the stuff inside that, has led us to that condition where we kind of, in a way, need to repair our relationship with ourselves. Would you agree with that? Is that? That's
Absolutely. And I think it's a beautiful way to say it, because all of us, I mean, there's all the studies that are being kind of trotted out now say that we've all been traumatized to some extent or another. Just life today is traumatizing. And so we can continue to, look for someone to blame, be it our parents or, the church or the government or someone else. But that doesn't actually help anything. It in fact disempowers us more, right? Because in the end, I can understand maybe my parents weren't the best parents, but their parents gave them what they got and they got from their parents. So at some point you have to say, all right, line in the sand. Thank you for what you gave me. Now it's my job. How do I go about repairing, which is lovely what you said, repairing or reparenting myself, So I get to be a grown-up now, and that means I have to learn stuff. I've spent 30 years learning. I still learn. I had a conversation today where it was so beautiful. I went, wow. And this is my main interest, and I still learn, and I love it. And you get the nuances, and you go, wow, that makes a difference. So the more that you embrace, face, take charge, be responsible, the more empowering it is, even though it can seem overwhelming sometimes. You have to break it down into, steps like be kind. If I feel like a failure, just breathe and go, yeah, but I'm so much more than that. That's one small thing, and I'm so much more than that. So you find little strategies and steps, and don't try and do it all at once, because it is a long journey. And the small steps will take you there much faster than trying to go, there's that saying, you can't cross the gorge into two leaps or something. No, that's a completely wrong thing. It's saying you have to do a big one. Baby steps are, I think, are the way to go. Baby steps. Yeah.
completely agree. Peter or Clem, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, if I may,
Yeah, please.
I loved hearing the comments from Carolyn. Carolyn is such a kind individual and so powerful in the way she facilitates opportunities and draws people out of themselves, really. I think we really need to come to terms with who we are as human beings. The human body is a miracle. Each of us is a miracle. Unfortunately, we're dumbed down to think in this mechanistic world, we're expected to just do certain things, when in actual fact, we're capable of so much. Now, in each second, there are trillions of actions being carried out by the human body. Whether it's breathing or digestion or psychological activity or circulation of the blood or repair of tissues, replacement of cells, generation of the immune system. It is a complete miracle. And it's a self-organising system. Unfortunately, none of us achieves what we're capable of. And I think until we really come to terms with what we offer, what we can do, and what we can do in helping ourselves and helping others to do extraordinary things, then we're missing the boat. I knew a gentleman who was professor of primary education at Monash University, Mike Askew, Professor Mike Askew, an Englishman, and he used to talk about the wonders of children, and he'd talk about the naive wisdom of children, that they're born with this wisdom, whether it's his field was mathematics, and he said he could see children coming through with this wisdom that they could draw upon in mathematics. But he also spoke about the sociological genius, all aspects of life. where individuals start with this naive wisdom, as he called it. Unfortunately, through our education processes and our expectations or lack thereof, we get dumbed down. So we stifle the enormous capacities that we have. Until we start to really generate these capacities, acknowledge that we've got them and open them up and tap into our own inner wisdom, which we all have, but too often we get too caught up in what we're expected to do or what the person with whom we're dealing is expected to do, rather than encouraging them to draw upon their own, to look within, to do what they're really capable of doing. I think if we can encourage people to think this way, then people will they'll have a different view of themselves. They'll recognise that there is an inner genius, that we have this miracle of a body, miracle of a mind and body-mind, and we can do so much. But until we come to terms with that, and I think that's where, from my perspective, meditation, mindfulness is so vital to this, because it unleashes the enormous capacities that we have. I'd love to hear Carolyn's comment and everybody's comment on what we really have and how we can unleash it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I was actually interested in Clem, just your view on this, because obviously you interact with a lot of people, and I understand there's a practical part of what your organization does, which is addressing the physical needs of people, providing them that safe space, giving them those sort of, you could say, more physical forms of needs that they need. But in the work you do, is there also this other part that often comes up in terms of, like what Peter is saying, is, helping the individual to really, do the inner work, or you must come across individuals who have a lot of, emotional or other kind of things that come up, and how does that play out in the work you do, and what does Project Kindness do to sort of help individuals in that way, if I can ask?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, fantastic question. So a lot of the individuals we work with have had severely traumatic backgrounds. One individual in particular was a ward of the state, and he then spent 15 years on the street, heavily involved with drugs and alcohol, and he lost everything that he was born with. He lost all of that. It was his story is a hard pill to swallow, but through that he lost that innate sense of, I believe everybody's born as a kind human being, and I believe that it's circumstances that often can change that aspect for people. So for this gentleman, we took him under our wing, and he began coming out to our weekly outreaches with us, which involve feeding the homeless in parks across Sydney. And he's quite a grumpy, guy. And again, because of his past and what's occurred. But I said to him one day, I said, let's see what we can do tonight to really make some of these individuals' evenings. And he said to me, but I don't know how to do that. And I said, you do know how to do that. Let's just give it a go. And about 10 minutes later, I saw him pick up a plate of food and walk it over to another gentleman who was in a wheelchair and couldn't come over. So people, I believe they can relearn. They just need a little bit of us to hold their hands and walk them through that process. But we certainly see it every day. People who have had really, really tough pasts come out of their shell and give kindness a go, I guess. It's not easy for everyone, but there's always an opportunity there. Yeah.
So beautiful work, Clem.
It is.
Thank you.
Priceless. Carolyn, did you want to add anything?
I don't think so at this point. It's rich and beautiful just to listen. And I think
Absolutely.
Peter's right, that the human potential where I think when we first arrive here on the earth, our potential is unlimited, and then we become limited by the messaging that we get and the history and the background and the contexts and cultures and the belief systems around what we can and cannot do and who we are and who we're not. And so I think for me that's the essence of what we're talking to, is the connection from the inside out. Who am I in my essence? What is the wonder of this life? And once I can peel away, which is a hard thing, I hear you, Clem, for someone who's been, got to that point, and to actually take a plate of food to another human being is like a massive step. To talk about unlimited potential seems like crazy. And it is two ends of the spectrum, but that's why I love baby steps, because you take one step, you can take another one. And then before long, if you've got the support and the community, the encouragement is there, and you can recover something that reminds you get to remember, something intrinsic, not from here, but from here. And I read an article today, a blog really, by this young woman who I met recently on Zoom at a meeting like this. And we connected, and beautiful, amazing young woman, just won prizes for her PhD work. And you just go, oh, terrific. And today her story that she told was how she, 13 years ago, I think it was, she was in a group home, she was under medical care, she was, almost dead because she was anorexic and addicted to the medication that she was on. Her brain wasn't functioning properly. And I didn't know any of that story, but that was her story. And today she's sharing that she's got herself, she found herself a place to rent, and she's completed her PhD, she's been awarded, and people celebrate her all the time on LinkedIn, I see, just for being who she is. And she's a very kind young woman. And then today I got that whole story and I went, that is just cool, and it reminds me then of what you're talking about with this man. If you didn't care, if you didn't take the time to get past the gruffness and the grumpiness and, be kind and encouraging, he's got no hope of maybe going down the same track as Heather. So, yeah, beautiful.
Carolyn, just to extend that further, I'm just curious, because obviously you've got a lot of experience in meditation and spirituality, and I think a lot of the things you've been talking about are spiritual concepts. I was just wondering, from your side, how do you see meditation and spirituality playing a role in that process of let's call it repairing the self, or reparenting the self, or restoring the self?
Wes, I think for me it's key. I started meditating because my partner was diagnosed with cancer, and when that happened 30 years ago, there was very little of the mind-body connection story out there. And it was actually Ian Gawler, the man who began the place where I am now, who I heard a radio interview, and he said meditation is key to anyone recovering cancer. So I learned to meditate with Michael. Michael passed away, but for both of us, it was about repairing he couldn't repair his body. In the end, it had gone too far. But a lot of healing took place. And I think healing is a really important, which is healing, is recovery, is the mending, the reparenting. And what meditation for me has done, I grew up feeling quite hopeless in the world. I looked out, I didn't see anything that inspired me, and I didn't feel capable and all those things. And what meditation did and does to this day is it's about creating the space to reconnect, like re-plug into what is intrinsic in me, and that's beyond Carolyn. So that Carolyn's like my personality construct. But before Carolyn and after Carolyn, there's this sort of through line, which is unlimited and bigger than Carolyn. And when I meditate, the sort of architecture of that unlimited self starts to reappear. And it's not a belief thing. I'm not going, yeah, you're great. Yeah, you're terrific. You're going to be good. I'm not talking myself up. In the meditation, it's like, oh, yes, that's right. Now I remember, and there's an ease that follows that. And, any anxiety or sense of overwhelm can just be quietened. And there's a sense that, and sometimes there's a sense that anything is possible. So I can go from not so much managing those emotional kind of tensions these days, but sometimes more these days, when I really connect in the meditation, it does have this sense of unlimitedness. And I get often that's when I'll get an intuitive kind of clarity. You must have this, Clem, how you move forward in a project that, where do you get your funding from? How do you make your next step? What do you do now? That a lot of that, I'm sure, comes by synchronicities, intuition. It's what you were saying, Peter, about meditation kind of makes the magic happen in a way. You tap your bigger capacities. So I think, Wes, for me, yeah, definitely, it's made a huge difference to me. I don't feel like I have to push or manipulate or maneuver or construct things so much. It's much more connects me into the world of flow from the inside out. And then I can be more kind because I'm not stressed, I'm not anxious, I don't feel like I'm underachieving, I'm not comparing myself. So all of that stuff kind of is like, oh, quiet. And then I see people. I actually see people and I don't, pass them by. And when you see someone, you're kinder, I think.
Yeah.
Close from within. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Carolyn, you put that so very well. I think mindfulness meditation can be very, very powerful. Clearly, we think too much. We're encouraged as children going into school to cram things into our head and keep the conscious mind full of information so that we can regurgitate that information. In so doing, we restrict ourselves and we stop ourselves from being able to come up with the ahas and the synchronicity that Carolyn speaks of. We need to be able to get out of the head and into the body. And in fact, that's precisely what meditation does. It provides you with the opportunity to get out of the head, into the body, so that you can really feel things. And when you start to feel things, then you're in a much better position to be able to extend kindness to yourself, but also to others, so that you can open up to a better world, because you're not being judgmental. You're not trying to cram the information that has been thrust into your frontal lobe. You're actually living it, and you're striking into the core. You're delving down into the core so that you can actually feel things and sense things. A great example of this in a sporting context is a great American baseballer, a fellow called Green, who was Sean Green, a leading batter for many years in the major leagues in America. He wrote a book called The Way of Baseball, Finding Stillness at 95 miles an hour. Now, 95 miles an hour is the speed at which the fastball pitchers hurl the ball. He was able to, a mindful practice that he used just with a simple batting tee, he could school himself so that the ball actually came to him projected at 95 miles an hour, but it seemed as if it was a beach ball floating towards him, as long as he wasn't thinking, as long as he wasn't in conscious mode, and he was just viewing and letting his body, the self-organising body that we all have, he was letting it self-organise. Now, it's much more complex than just standing there and letting it self-organise. He did a lot of practice and worked on his career throughout his life. But the essence of the whole success that he had was being able to get out of the head and just let the body do what the body is capable of. And I suggest that we can all learn much from that. We can actually find ways of getting away from thinking and getting into our core, into our body, in an altered state, in a mindful state, and we can be much better at expressing ourselves and much kinder, I would suggest.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's tapping into that flow, I guess, isn't it? As Caroline was saying.
It's the flow, yeah.
Just allowing, I guess, in a way, allowing that kindness to spill out from our from inside, from our intrinsic nature, from our being, and letting that be the basis or the energy of our actions. I'm just seeing the time. It's actually flown very quickly. And I did want to just ask another question to Clem just before we wrap up. And this is sort of changing direction a little bit with where the conversation has been going. So Clem, one thing that really stood out for me when I was learning about your organization is that Project Kindness has this quite resounding theme of family running through it. One of the first lines I saw on your website was, Project Kindness is first and foremost a family. And I thought that was just amazing. And interestingly, that value of family is something that is very similar and runs really strongly through the Brahma Kumaris organization that I'm from. And so I was just really curious about it. I'd really love to hear about what that value of family, what does it mean to you, and how do you connect that with the kindness and the work you do, I guess, both within your organization, but also the way that you then interact with the people that you help. How does that value of family kind of connect to all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, I had a wonderful upbringing. I'm one of four, and we were instilled from a very young age that we stuck together no matter what. And now with Project Kindness, that's stuck, and it's a real family affair, I guess, which is a lot of the success with Project Kindness. From sticking together, we have been able to create this organization. And I think that's where, you know, we see people on a daily basis who are doing it really tough, who are, you know, have horrific stories, and I guess we bring them into the family. and they become part of the Project Kindness family. And I think for a lot of people, you know, we've been told that the support from Project Kindness is what gets them through most days. So I think it just shows when you get a group of people together who are kind and wanting to make a difference to our communities, that the success rate is huge, and we'll never get around to everyone. But if we had a few more people, you know, helping out here, there, and everywhere, I think our world would be a better place. So yeah, certainly family, not just, you know, blood related. It's people from all different walks of life, and I think that's so important.
I completely agree, and I think it's a really good thing to kind of, if I can use the word, break down the conventional definition of family, which as you said is typically blood relations. And I see that's what you're doing, is you're just extending that vision and that relationship in a more unlimited way, and it clearly plays out in the way that you help people and the way that people's lives are changed through all the work that your organisation does. So I think it's wonderful, and I'm really glad to have had you here. And I'm seeing the time, so I think we have come to an end, and I just wanted to say thank you again. Thank you, Clem, for being with us. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Caroline. Very, very rich discussion, as I'm sure all of our participants have felt. I hope that everyone has gotten something out of this. And as I said at the start, you know, these conversations are really, they're part of the Kindness Challenge, and they're really there to help our participants think about kindness in a deeper way, and to really help them with those acts of kindness that they do through the month, and to transform their understanding of what kindness is. So big thank you again to everyone. And of course, thank you to our panelists once again. Thank you to our audience for joining us. We unfortunately weren't able to live stream, just had some technical issues up front, but we will definitely be posting this online. So I'm sure that there will be many more people watching this and taking benefit from this. So I really appreciate it. And I will just look at the time again and get myself a move on. Just a reminder for everyone who's listening that we do have sessions running through the month for part of this Kindness Challenge, and you should see the screen share coming on. Yep, there it is. So you can see, and sorry, let me just adjust my screen. So you can see tomorrow we have reflective conversation, 7:30 p.m. AEDT. That is on the topic of kindness to close family. So you could say we've started with ourselves and we're sort of stepping out to the next circle. And of course, I also just want to emphasize, so Tuesday, the 23rd of November, 7:30 p.m., that is our next panel discussion. So next week, Tuesday, that will be on the topic of kindness to colleagues and contacts. So please do join us for that. We have some really more wonderful speakers lined up. And of course, remember to submit your acts of kindness. And of course, please do share it. The program started on the 13th, but it's absolutely not too late for people to join. And, you know, I'd really invite Carolyn, Peter, Clem, if you have contacts, you know, in your organizations as well, if you guys want to participate in the challenge, please, you feel most welcome. Check out the Tree of Kindness online. The portal link is shown there, bit.ly/BKCKIO, rolls off the tongue quite easily. And so we will wrap it up there. And I think we will be finishing with just a couple of minutes of just some quiet meditation. So thank you again, Carolyn, Peter, Clem.
Thank you,
and
Wes.
appreciate your time.
Wonderful initiative. Congratulations.
Well done, Wes. Best wishes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, Clem.
Lovely to meet you, Clem.
You too, Carolyn.
You too.
Peter, thank
Clem.
you. Really inspiring. Thank you so much. Thanks, Wes.
Thanks, Clem. All right, so we'll have a couple of minutes, just a few minutes of meditation, and then we'll say goodnight. Thank you again, Carolyn, Peter, and Clem. Thank you to everyone. Om Shanti and good night.
Shanti.
Thank you.